Jump right in. We'll probably answer many of your questions tonight in the course of our presentation. But in the event that we don't get to everything that's on your mind, you can place your question in the chat near the end, and Sarah will be here to answer those questions. I actually have to leave in the middle of our time together tonight for another obligation. So as I mentioned, I'm Chris Doran. I'm the communications manager here in Student Financial Services, and Sarah with me here tonight, my wife and my chief of staff, our chief of staff. By virtue of being my wife, she is my chief of staff. I'll put it that way. Okay, we'll dive right in then with, I think the first thing we have for you is our homework for parents and students. Nope, I take it back. What we have is what we do in Student Financial Services. People think of us as the people who give the money in terms of financial aid, and then the people who take it away in terms of student accounts and billing. That's not exactly true, but I understand the perception that people may have out there. We do bill students. It's our office's job is to bill students for tuition and fees as outlined by the Board of Visitors. It's what allows the university to remain open and functioning as a place of higher education. And so that includes billing students and then collecting on those bills by the due dates, and then working with students who may have missed the due date in order to help them figure out ways to meet their financial obligations while they're continuing to attend classes. As I mentioned, we also evaluate students' eligibility for need-based financial aid, and that includes federal financial aid as well as state financial aid and university financial aid. In addition, we process external scholarships as well as university scholarships, perhaps from the Alumni Association or other foundations. We do military educational benefits processing. Sarah will talk about that perhaps a little bit later, but if you have military education benefits availability, that really starts with our partners in the University Registrar's Office, but we do get involved when it comes down to time to have the money discussion about military ed benefits. And again, we also do financial counseling for students. We have a free peer financial counseling program. We have student volunteers at the university who have been trained in basics of budgeting, credit card choices, credit card usage habits, managing a bank account, understanding and using student loans effectively, and a little bit of work that we do training them on the basics of investing for students, especially those who are about to graduate and move into the working world, or graduate students who may have funds available to them through their graduate funding and who have an interest in putting some of that money to work for them financially. So next slide, please, Sarah. To reach us, this information is, I should say, this deck is available through our Student Financial Services website, the address for which is right there. And if you go to that website and do a search for presentations, then you'll find a page where this presentation is actually linked as a PDF, and you can review it either now or later as you wish. We do offer availability by email, by phone. We have many factual questions are answered on our website. All you really need to do is search the website, and our phone hours are listed right there. Phones are quite busy at this time of the year, so if you do have to call us, we recommend that you call as close as you can to 10 a.m. or 1 p.m. to get an early slot in line to speak with one of our colleagues. We also have an automated chatbot service available on our website. In the lower left, you'll see something that you can click on and ask some generic questions that are really non-student specific. If you want to ask a question about, my student has a Kiwanis Club scholarship, but they also have this benefit, and how is that going to impact their financial aid? That's really something that you probably want to reach out to speak to a human about and get more personalized support in that regard. So it's very useful for those factual questions, not so useful for very student specific. All right, homework that I jumped the gun on a few moments ago. This is intended for, it says homework for students, but in many cases, it's really homework for parents. The first one is that students, we encourage them to set up parents as what's called an authorized user in UVAPay. UVAPay is the payment processing system that we use for all interactions related to making payments for student accounts, and it's where we also list charges, term charges for, say, for example, the fall term. Those term charges were just finalized at the beginning of last week, and so those are available in UVAPay. Becoming an authorized user is extremely important from our perspective. If you aren't authorized as an authorized user by your student, then it makes it difficult for us to have conversations by email or on the phone with anyone but the student about the student's account. So even mom and dad who are paying the bill, perhaps totally taking care of that, the student is protected by federal privacy laws related to their student account. The student needs to actually authorize individuals for this access. And so there's two ways to do that. One is to have the student sit down, log into their UVAPay account, and actually set you up as an authorized user. The other is that you can go to a URL link that I'll point out in just a moment, that you can go and request that access. What it'll do is it'll send an email to the student and say that this person from this email address has requested that you set them up as an authorized user, and then the student needs to take some action. Students can revoke this privilege if they wish to. We don't really recommend that in many cases, that if a student authorizes a parent or some other trusted adult in their life to have access to UVAPay to see the student account. We understand that family situations are fluid and things may change, relationships may change. But in most cases, a student removing that access makes it more difficult for a parent who is still actively involved in their lives to reach out to us and get the support that they need in order to manage the student account so the student can focus on being a student. So again, authorized user is very important. If your student hasn't already done that, please talk with them about that as quickly as you can. Students completing the to-do list items. We have many to-do list items in the SIS Student Center. And those to-do list items related to financial aid are really action items that the student needs to address. There are also other departments such as student health, which we'll get to in just a moment, who put to-do list items out on the student's account on an annual basis. The Dean of Students or Student Affairs office places many to-do list items on the student's account as well. And all of those are ones that the student needs to take care of as readily as they see them. For student financial services to-do list items, we actually send reminder notices by email to the students who have them every 2 or 3 weeks to let them know that they need to take care of those. Just a little gentle nudge from our office to them. Students who may have credits on their account, perhaps from financial aid or a scholarship that is greater than their charges, will be eligible for what we refer to as a refund. And that's essentially a credit in excess of charges. We recommend that students sign up in their student information system for direct deposit. Instructions are on our website. In fact, they're available through that link that you can see there, suggested there. Students set up direct deposit by indicating a bank account where they want excess funds to go to. It could be the student's own bank account, or it could be a parent's bank account. It matters not to us. It's a decision that the student makes, preferably in conjunction with their parent or other trusted adult who's involved in their lives, to make sure that the money is being managed in the right place by the right person at the right time. I mentioned the to-do list items a moment ago. Every year, student health, our colleagues in student health require a health insurance verification. And that is where basically there is a policy at the university that every student has to demonstrate on an annual basis that they have health insurance coverage at least comparable to the university's health insurance coverage. That is the university student health insurance policy. If they don't have that, if they can't demonstrate that they are covered by another policy that is at least comparable, then the student needs to enroll in the Aetna student health insurance plan. And that charge goes out on the student accounts in late September, and it's not due until Halloween. However, the to-do list item needs to be addressed by the student, preferably now. They've got, I believe, until the end of August to do so, but I wouldn't wait that long. I would try to have the student take care of it before they come to grounds in a few weeks. Otherwise, the student will be charged about $3,000, which is the cost of the health insurance. And especially, it's actually a pretty awful thing if the student is in fact covered by a qualifying plan to allow them to waive the requirement to purchase the plan. It's really unfortunate if a student gets that charge. Completely unnecessary part of being a student if they can waive that. And finally, for those who use social media effectively in their lives, you can follow us on Twitter or Instagram, or you can like us on Facebook. We are simply at UVASFS on all three of those platforms. We post mostly informational posts to those sites. We're not really Instagram ready. There's nothing really action-like about us. We're not action heroes in student financial services, but we do post a lot of very relevant and valuable information about upcoming deadlines or activities going on that may be of interest to students and their families when it comes to managing their financial life here at UVA. So thanks, Sarah. Next slide. All right, I talked a little bit about what parents get as an authorized user, parents or guardians, or as I said, other trusted adults. You get notifications about the term charges. Those come out in mid-July and then again in mid-December for the spring academic term. We don't send paper bills home to the student's permanent home address. And we don't actually, when we send those notifications out, it doesn't include student-specific information. It simply says there are new charges, log into UVAPay to see what those are and to make payment. You do get regular notice of new charges, as well as any past due charge notifications. New charges, typically, let's say a student charges at the bookstore in August when they come to grounds and they've got their classes. In the first week of classes, they use their ID card to make a charge at the university bookstore. Because that charge was incurred in the month of August, it'll typically be due at the end of September. So what that means is that at the start of September, we'll send out a notice to the student, as well as any authorized users associated with that student, to let them know that there are new charges. And let's say life gets pretty busy for that family during the month of September, and they don't actually take care of the charge, it slips their mind. Then at the start of October, the student will and the authorized user will both get a notice about the fact that the charge has become past due. In certain cases, a student may also incur a student finance hold at that time. But all it means is that the student has got to take care of the charge really essentially prior to registering for classes for whatever the next semester or term is. There's not a penalty, a financial penalty assigned, or a interest or anything like that. It's just a sort of a second reminder that there are some charges to be taken care of. Authorized users also get emails about critical deadlines like the financial aid deadlines. Our financial aid deadline is March 1st every year. So we do send out several notifications throughout the winter. So if you applied for financial aid, or even if you didn't apply for financial aid, we know that family circumstances, now more than ever, family circumstances can change unexpectedly. And so we do send that out to all students who are expected back for the next academic year to let them know that they can apply for financial aid. You can also pay charges pretty much anytime. There are some periodic scheduled maintenance windows where UVAPay may be unavailable, but for the most part, you can make payments whenever it's convenient for you. You can also view the student account details. You can see 1098-T forms. This is important if you plan to claim any of the education tax benefits on your tax returns. Those are available in UVAPay by January 31st of each year. You can also sign up for optional tuition insurance if you think that your student may or may not be able to complete a term, maybe due to health reasons. You can purchase by the first day of classes each semester, you can purchase the optional tuition insurance. And you can also sign up for a semester payment plan that is still available for the fall semester. If you sign up between now and August the 5th, you will essentially make three payments, August 5th, September 5th and October 5th. So any remaining charges that aren't covered by other forms of payment, you can schedule through a semester payment plan. I want to put in a plug here for the financial wellness program that we do. In addition to periodic programming throughout the year, which is kind of getting restarted now that we're back in person, and students are able to think about things other than just the bare necessities of their day-to-day living. We also have a peer financial counseling program, and these are students, undergraduate students who, as I mentioned, are trained in basics of personal finance. It's free to all students. We draw our counselors from all walks of university life, including students who whose parents can simply write the check for payments, as well as those students who rely heavily on financial aid. So we get students with a vast array of experiences, and hopefully that near peer experience will help those students who come to us for help to find someone who is credible to them, who understands their situation. Anything, as I said, from budgeting to choosing a credit card, managing a bank account, trying to avoid overdraft fees, pretty much anything that they have a question about, we'll make sure that they get those questions answered. All right, we'll talk a little bit about UVAPay now. As I mentioned, term charges are available online only July and December. We do not send a paper bill home to the student. The URL link in the third bullet point is the one for authorized users, and that is the one that you would use to access the payer portal and to help manage your student's account. When you do log into UVAPay, the first landing page is the account summary page. The tab right to the right of that is account activity, and that's the one I want to focus on in just a moment. But first, I do want to draw your attention to the quick links sort of stack of options on the right-hand side of that screen. This is where a student can see whether they have a financial hold. It's also a place where students can go to set up authorized users. Authorized users can see the 1098-T form. They can click that link on optional tuition insurance if they feel like they might need that, and they can get more. They can follow the instructions to get more information from the third-party provider who manages the tuition insurance for UVA students. And there are also links there to the withdrawal policy and to the approved tuition and fees for the current academic year. But if you click on account activity, you'll come to this page, and near the bottom of it, you can see on the right-hand side that's circled is that print term statement next to the 2022 fall term. And this is where you can go to see the details about the charges for the specific term. As your student goes through time, that list will become much longer with spring and fall and summer and January term. And you can see some details around that, including a sort of a total, what is the balance due for a given term. So if you click on that print term statement, you'll get a page that looks something like this, where it's broken down by line, and you can see the date that it was posted and the date that it is due. And this is an example from this spring term, because at the time we put this together, we didn't have the fall terms charges published. The first line you can see is a school activity. That's a $4 per semester charge by the College of Arts and Sciences. And you can see the much larger tuition for a non-Virginian student, and then the comprehensive fee for a non-Virginian student. And then the university student activity fee, that's $50 per year or $25 per semester. Now, this student had a dining plan, but canceled it, and that's why they have a $50 charge from dining for that cancellation fee. So those are all the charges that were term charges for that student. The next section includes a lot of the anticipated or real credits that a student had. There are several grants. There's a refund that the student had on their accounts. That was later a little bit later after the start of the term. And that was because their financial aid was greater than their total charges. So they had a bit of a refund. Now, later in the term, you can see that this student charged at the bookstore. And so it shows up on the actual term statement because this is a living document for each semester. So if a student goes to the bookstore, uses their ID card, charges it to their student account, it's going to show up here on the account. So this student happens to have a balance of just under $200. And that's what the student would need to pay before the end of the term in order to remain in good standing, or at any point in the term, actually, in order to remain in good standing with the university. My last point here is to talk about looking ahead to next year. And that is for those who think they're going to apply for financial aid. There's really two camps. You need to think about which one you fall into. If you are a parent who has a student who you know qualifies for need-based financial aid, you'll want to complete the FAFSA as well as the CSS profile every year. Every year that you believe you're going to be qualifying for need-based financial aid, we'll need both of those applications to evaluate the student's eligibility. Both of those documents are available online after October 1st each year, actually starting October 1st each year. And we encourage early completion. Now, we encourage early completion so that it's done. That's the pure and simple reason we encourage early completion. The fact of the matter is, for students returning to the university for their second, third, or fourth year, financial aid typically is not made available to those students until June, or depending upon how responsive they are to their to-do list items, maybe later than June. But it also doesn't have any impact on how much aid you would qualify for. The real reason to get them done as soon as possible, preferably during the Thanksgiving holiday or during the break between semesters in December and January, is that it's done. You don't have to worry about it. You know it's done. And you can breathe a sigh of relief and know that you've done what you need to do each year. So we encourage it, but just know that it's not going to mean that you're going to get more aid. It means also doesn't mean you're going to get your aid necessarily. Well, it does actually potentially mean you're going to get your aid sooner if your student is right on top of their to-do list items, and that's a good thing too. I have a daughter who's a second year, and waiting until late June for her to get her financial aid award, even though I'm in this business and I know what's going on, I feel it. There's still a sense of anxiety about that. So I'm sympathetic to that. I understand. But bear in mind that just as your students in the first year this year, who are first years this year, we were working on their financial aid throughout the winter and the spring months. And so once we can kind of say that we've taken care of the entering class, that's when we turn our attention to our returning students. So that's why it's a little bit later in the springtime and merging into the summertime. But by all means, do not wait beyond the March 1st deadline each year to ensure that you are considered on time and that your student will be eligible for all forms of financial aid for which they might qualify. So I think at this point, I hand things over to Sarah. I am going to drop off the call. We're glad you're here tonight, and we hope that this is helpful, and Sarah will bring you home.
All right, thanks, Chris. We're halfway there, so hang in there, everybody. I'm going to give you some practical information about payment types and things that you can do to make sure that the bill is paid on time. And then I do have time at the end for questions, and we'll just do those through the Q&A at the end of this. So despite the fact that it says my name is Chris Dorn too, my name is not Chris Dorn, I'm Sarah. And I will keep going. So thanks for being here tonight. We're really happy that you joined us. All right, so payments. There are lots of different ways to make payments to your students' accounts. Financial aid is one of them, which Chris was just talking about, the deadlines for that. But if you do have access to UVAPay, which again is really the best way to navigate the financial pieces of your students' experience here and allows us to provide you the best information. Through UVAPay, you can pay us by electronic check. So it's basically just putting in your bank account and routing number and telling us how much you want to pay. And once you do that, the credit will show up automatically on the student's account. So even if you wait until the due date to make the payment, if you're doing it electronically, then that will satisfy the on-time payment. It will happen immediately upon entering that information. You can also pay by credit card. Just be forewarned that there is a 2.75% fee that goes along with making payments by credit card. So depending on your mileage plan or what you get as a benefit from making a payment through credit card, it may or may not be worth it given that you're paying that 2.75% fee. But if it is the way that you need to make payment, that is definitely an option for you there. So we like to give you multiple ways to do that. If you're one of those folks who needs to pay by check, or maybe grandma is helping to pay and wants to pay by check, we just do ask that you go ahead and print out the term statement that Chris was showing you. At the bottom of it is a remittance advice, and that remittance advice will have the student's ID information on there and their name. And if you'll just include that with the check, then that way we'll be sure to get that applied to the correct student's account, which is always a good thing. Lots of our parents have 529 plans that they've been saving for college, and I'm always so thankful for folks that were able to do that. I have 3 children. I've put 2 of them through college, and even though I've worked in this business for a very long time, did not save. So I had to take some other options to make payments toward their college. But the 529 savings plans are really awesome ways to make payment. There are the savings plans, and then there are the prepaid plans. And both of them, our recommendation is that you contact the plan and make sure that they know that your student is attending the University of Virginia. If you do have the Virginia 529 prepaid plan, if you've already contacted them to let them know, then you should be seeing an outstanding anticipated credit from the 529 prepaid plan already on the student's account. If you just notified them, we do get rosters once or twice a week from them indicating who is eligible for funding. And so we will put that on there as soon as we get that information from them. So if you haven't contacted them yet, that's okay, but do that as soon as you can so that we get that information out there. And then with the savings plans, it's really up to you whether you want them to send the money directly to the university, or whether you want them to send that money to you and then you make payment electronically through UVAPay. Either one of those is fine. We just want to make sure that all of that stuff happens on time. And then Chris mentioned a little bit the semester payment plan. At this point, the semester payment plan is a 3-month plan. So the payments would come out August 5th, September 5th, and October 5th for fall. There is a $45 fee to set up a payment plan each semester. So if you want to utilize that to be able to spread out your payments over time, you certainly can. Just be aware that that's going to be charged to you at the time that we start taking those payments. You would have to set up a bank account for the money to be drawn from on the 5th of each month. And we would just split the amounts of what is owed for tuition fees, room and board. So it's just those charges. We would split those over the time period and would draw those on the 5th of each month. For spring, we will have a 5-month payment plan available for you that will start in November and go through March. We did have a 5-month for fall as well, but it starts in June. So most of the time our new students aren't aware that that's out there. We do send some information, but folks aren't usually thinking about it at that time. But for the rest of the time, we will have 5-month payment plans per term if that's something that's helpful to you. And again, that's through UVAPay. So if you're an authorized user, you can go in there and check that out and see what that looks like. I also want to just mention that we will have payments out there pending as anticipated credits. So like the Virginia 529 prepaid might be an anticipated credit. If your student is receiving financial aid, your student may see anticipated credits out there from their financial aid, whether it's an Access UVA scholarship amount or pending loans. And the reason that those are anticipated is that for the financial aid, we're not allowed to actually disperse them to the student's account as real credits until about 10 days prior to the start of the semester. That's a federal regulation. So we have them out there as anticipated. They count toward the payment of the bill. We just don't actually make them real credits until right before the term starts. But from our standpoint and from your standpoint, when it actually becomes a real credit, it's not all that critical when it comes to making sure that payment is made on time. Also, for students who are bringing in scholarships, which a lot of our students will bring in scholarships from the outside, There's a form that they can fill out to submit to us to let them know that the scholarship funds are coming, so that you don't have to make payment prior to the scholarship arriving. If we know it's coming, we will make it an anticipated credit, and we won't expect you to make that payment. One note on outside scholarships, though, is unless the donor who's providing it has indicated on their letter that they've provided to you or to us that the scholarship is for a particular semester, we will assume that it's an academic year scholarship, and we'll split it in half between fall and spring. So just for planning purposes, be aware of that. And then, of course, if you're utilizing military education benefits, you'll see information out there about that as well. Once we've gotten all of the information from our university registrar's office. So that's where, if you're using those, you start with the university registrar's office. They're our certifying agent. So they will get the certificate of eligibility from you. They'll ask you to submit a form requesting benefits. Then they let us know, and then we do the billing with the VA. But in the meantime, throughout that process, we will put an indicator on the student's account to hold them in good standing until we get the money from the VA, because that can take quite a bit of time. All right. And again, as I mentioned, we don't disperse the financial aid until about 10 days prior to the start of class. I did want to mention too that if the students are utilizing the federal subsidized or unsubsidized loans, or if you're utilizing a Parent Plus loan to help make payment toward the student's bill, those do have an origination fee because they're coming from the federal government. They take a small fee out of it prior to sending us the funds. So if you see a loan for $2,000, but you only see a credit for $990, that's because 10 of it was taken out as that origination fee. But it's a pretty small amount for the student loans, a little bit larger for the Parent Plus loans, but still not substantial. Also, if your student was offered federal work study, just to note that that offer is out there so students can apply for jobs at the university through the federal work study program. The benefit to the student is that departments love work study students because the federal government pays a portion of their wages. But they would have to apply for a job, and then they would just get paid on a biweekly basis like they're working at any other job. So it won't actually credit the bill, but it does help them with spending money, having money to buy books or supplies or whatever it is that they need. And then there's a link in here. If you go to the presentation, as Chris mentioned, on our website, all of these links are out there for you. And that just takes you to some other places on our website that provide financial aid information. And then refunds of credits. Again, we mentioned in the homework that we ask that you sign up for have your students sign up for direct deposit. I always like to tell folks, and I usually get a big gasp when I say this, but in many years, we have about $1 million in uncashed checks from our students, which is a ton of money that they could be using. And it's usually just because they didn't update their address, or, well, they certainly hadn't signed up for direct deposit, so the money didn't go directly to their bank. But, students move around a lot. They have roommates that take their mail and throw it in a box somewhere, and the student may not even know that it's there, or they just weren't paying attention to the mail. But whatever it is, I like to give that number because we do send out a lot of money to students in refunds or in departmental scholarship funding. And so it's just good, even if you think your student will never get a payment from the university, it's helpful to have them sign up for direct deposit just in case. And then refunds for the fall semester, well, for any semester, especially refunds from financial aid that they're needing for their living expenses, just to be forewarned that we can't actually refund those until the first week of class. So if, for example, they're living off grounds next year, they need to come with money to pay for their August rent if they're starting in August, and then the refund will come to them at the end of August, early September from the fall semester. And we also ask our students to make sure they keep up their mailing addresses so that if we ever do need to send them something, that it's going to the right place. So the main thing I think that we want everyone to know that is attending this webinar and that is attending the University of Virginia is that despite the fact that Student Financial Services does ask you to pay for your student to come to UVA, we really have the same goals that you do. And that is for the students to come to have a wonderful academic, social experience, to learn and to grow, to hopefully not stumble along the way with too many financial questions or issues. But if something does happen where something gets paid late, or we forgot to contact our 529 plan, anything that's going on that we need to know about, please just either you or your student give us a call or email us, because we would rather work with you up front to figure out what we can do to mitigate any kind of underlying complications, rather than find out at a later date when a student can't enroll in a class or something because they have a hold. As soon as we know there's a problem, it's best to get in touch with us, and that way we can help get you on your way. And then in case you weren't here at the beginning, we did have this homework that we put out there for parents and students. And again, a lot of this stuff is stuff that the students have to do, but we are aware that the parents are the ones who are often nudging their students to get things done. So this is a reminder of that homework. And again, if you weren't here at the beginning, becoming an authorized user in UVAPay is really, if you take nothing else from this, really critical, because it just gives you access to information about your students' finances, and also gives us the ability to talk with you individually and specifically about their student account. So that's a really important piece to do. All right, and again, our contact information. All right, and now I am going to close the presentation, because now it's just the Q&A section. So let me go to the questions and see what we've got. And once we're done with questions, we'll be done, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, great question. Will refunds be sent to the student's home address if they haven't signed up for direct deposit? And I think that well, absolutely, it would go to their student address in Charlottesville or wherever they have as their local mailing address. And so in that case, that's why we recommend direct deposit. And at the very least, if they don't have direct deposit, we want to make sure that they have their addresses up to date. So that's a great question. They would not go home. Okay. And I'm not, wow, pretty savvy group we've got here. All right, well, I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes here to see if you have any other questions you might want to ask. And if not, then I will let you all go. And thank you again so much for participating in this. We really appreciate your time and interest in hearing what we had to say. It's really helpful to us for folks to know who we are, to know what we do, and to know that we really are here to help you and your students navigate the financial pieces of the university. It's a pretty substantial piece of their experience here. And thank you so much for attending. And I hope that maybe we'll get to meet when you come to grounds and bring your students. So thanks so much. And I'm going to close us out now. Have a great evening.